Imagine a tale shrouded in mystery where ancient kings and queens embark on a perilous journey across uncharted waters, defying the limits of their time. How did they assemble a vast navy in the Nile Delta and navigate the treacherous seas of the Western Mediterranean? Join us as we unravel the enigmatic voyage of Pharaohs Aye-Gaythelos and Ankhesenamun Scota, exploring the untold connections between ancient Egypt, the Phoenicians, and the lost civilizations of the Mediterranean. Egyptian royalty and Phoenician seafaring legacy. An important question yet to be addressed is how a king and queen of Egypt assembled this large fleet in the Nile Delta and navigated the largely uncharted waters of the Western Mediterranean. Although the Egyptians possessed boat-building skills for their extensive Nile fleet, they were not renowned in this era of their seafaring skills. Although Aye-Gaythelos and Ankhesenamun Scota were fleeing an unstable political situation, and necessity is the mother of invention, a long voyage without the necessary knowledge and skills might be highly foolhardy. The alternative option is that the Egyptian royalty could employ the skills from other nations bordering the Mediterranean. And an obvious candidate for this might be the Phoenicians, the Mediterranean's most celebrated seafaring nation. But this suggestion is more complex than it may first seem. The reign of Pharaoh Aye has been classically dated as 1325 to 1321 BC, the late 14th century, while the rise of the Phoenicians as a seafaring nation has been traced only to the 11th century BC onwards. However, there must have been the nucleus of a seafaring empire in the Mediterranean earlier than this, because the vast armada of the Sea People invasion of Egypt took place in the mid-12th century BC. This gives us the tantalizing possibility that the earlier voyages of Aye-Gaythelos and Scota were related to and laid the foundations of the Phoenician Empire. The research thus far has unearthed evidence pointing to the Sea People invasion of Egypt in the 12th century BC being masterminded by Hyksos-Egyptian diaspora royalty, who were trying to utilize mercenary armies from all over the Mediterranean to regain control of Egypt. These military exploits and the need for subsequent reinforcements and materials may well have laid the foundations for a maritime trading empire, which may have evolved into the separate empire of the Phoenicians. Perhaps a review of the Phoenician Empire is required to investigate this suggestion further. Unfortunately, the origins of the Phoenicians are shrouded in mystery, and classical mythology merely suggests a homeland in Scythia, modern Ukraine. However, in complete contrast to this, it is a fact that the majority of Phoenician art and architecture displays distinctly Egyptian influences and styles. So a close cultural link to the exiled Hyksos-Israelites is entirely possible. Whatever their origins, the Phoenicians eventually took residence along the Levantine coast with their main port cities of Tyre, Byblos, and Sidon. Utilizing their maritime skills to the fullest, new colonies were established from the 11th century BC onwards at diverse locations across the Mediterranean. Eventually, the Phoenicians were to establish cities in nearly every Mediterranean coastal nation bar modern Italy and Greece. But where did this maritime tradition come from? Maritime mysteries, Phoenician origins revealed. What were the imperatives that drove the Phoenicians onto the capricious seas? The most probable answer, to which classical history subscribes, is that military and political pressures forced these people out into the Mediterranean. But the new twist to this history is that this was not pressure from the Hittites upon the people of the Levantine coasts. Instead, this was a few centuries earlier. The pressure came from Upper Egypt, and it was applied to the Hyksos pharaohs of Lower Egypt. The first wave of migrants would have set out from Egypt circa 1580 BC, as Utmost I swept to power in Lower Egypt and forced the Hyksos peoples out of the country and into new coastal settlements across the eastern Mediterranean. This, however, was not the only civil war in Egypt, and the religious reforms of Akhenaten in the 14th century BC destabilized Egypt in a strikingly similar fashion. Once more, sections of the lower Egyptian Hyksos people and monarchy were being pushed out across the Mediterranean in a flotilla of small craft. However, none of this explains where the maritime expertise utilized by the Hyksos-Israelites and Aye-Gaythelos came from. Undoubtedly, the 14th century BC Egyptians had the necessary boat-building skills, which is amply demonstrated by the impressive cedar boat buried next to the Great Pyramid at Giza. Any nation capable of constructing such a leviathan would be amply equipped to build boats capable of circumnavigating the Mediterranean. But what of the navigational skills for open water sailing? The source of this maritime expertise is this pre-Phoenician era may come from a surprising location, Thera, Santorini. The Theran Minoans, many of whom were resided in the Hyksos-Israelite capital of Avaris in 1580 BC, appear to have had a close relationship with the lower Egyptian monarchy. More importantly, perhaps, they would have also had the maritime experience that the Hyksos-Israelites would have needed during their first great exodus from Egypt. So, during this first exodus out of Lower Egypt, some refugees may have taken to their boats and established colonies elsewhere in the Mediterranean. Some may have even gone to Crete or Greece and spread their culture and language there, perhaps even aspiring to positions of power and influence. Thera's eruption, exodus, and artistic mysteries. Between 1625 and 1600 BC, the massive volcano on the island of Thera erupted with devastating violence. The force and fallout from this eruption were sufficient to create the biblical plagues in Egypt, which resulted in the Hyksos-Israelite exodus. Yet, it may also have provided some of these exiles with their means of deliverance. Luckily for the inhabitants of Thera, the volcano must have given them a reasonable amount of warning about its intentions, for no buried population was ever found in the ruined city of Akrotiri, and it would appear that the people had all fled the island. This exodus and the subsequent destruction of the island of Thera formed the basis for Plato's story of Atlantis. A fresco of the city of Atlantis is actually on display in modern Santorini. However, the destination of these exiles from Thera is unknown, and it is presumed that they fled to the Minoan Empire in Crete, whose society and nautical technology were virtually identical to the Therans. However, around the same time, several Minoans began arriving in the city of Avaris in Lower Egypt, and their distinctive artwork has been discovered in the remains of this city. The excavations of Avaris by Manfred Bedak uncovered some exceptional frescoes that were undoubtedly Minoan, both in their design and execution. The fresco or secco painting technique was unknown in Egypt and the Levant then, but many fine examples of this type of artwork have been discovered at Knossos in Crete. In addition, the characters in the Avaris frescoes wear distinctive Minoan costumes, and the subject matter in these frescoes, bull leaping, is uniquely Minoan. Indeed, the styles employed are typically Theran than Minoan, indicating that the artists came from Thera, Santorini. The colors used in these paintings are also interesting, as the bull leaper skins are invariably depicted in lighter tones, ranging from yellow to white. Archaeologists have speculated that the lighter-toned athletes may be female, but that is contradicted by a similar image of a yellow-skinned young boy and a white-skinned prince with feathers at Knossos. It needs to be clarified if these skin tones represent a fashion or genuinely fair-skinned people, but there is a similarity here with the Egyptian depictions from around this era. In the tomb of Usarhat, a royal scribe who worked under Amenhotep II and was buried at Thebes, many people in the wall scenes are depicted as having blonde hair. This is not simply an artistic license, as some people in the scenes have black hair. So, was this a new fashion for light-colored wigs, or were there pockets of other nationalities living and working among the general population? Exploring ancient Egyptian, Phoenician, and Mediterranean civilizations offers a captivating narrative of migration, cultural exchange, and maritime prowess. While there are still unanswered questions concerning the capabilities of Scota and Gaythelos' travel across the sea toward Ireland, our pursuit of knowledge illuminates the enduring legacy of ancient mariners. Join us again, But in the meantime, hit that like button, remember to subscribe, and leave a comment below. Until next time.